Hey everybody, I wanted to do a commentary on an article that ran recently on Vogue magazine, or at least on Vogue.com, which is titled, Why It's Time to Believe Amber Heard by Raven Smith, May 17th, 2022. That date is pertinent because based on what's in the article itself, you might be tempted to think that this was an article that was written towards the beginning of the trial before any actual evidence was ever established or anything like that. I'm not going to waste a lot of time trying to make a case against Amber Heard in this video, because I think that the courts have already, and the current legal proceedings have already done an admirable job of establishing that. But I did want to respond to this article because it's truly extraordinary, some of the things that are said and some of the attitudes that are taken. This is not a work of journalism. It is a work of gaslighting masquerading as journalism. So, to begin, it goes, where to begin with the online cesspit that is Depp v. Heard? Unless you've been living under a rock for the past few weeks, you'll know that the ex-spouses are back in court. Johnny Depp is seeking damages of $50 million after Amber Heard wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post in 2018 in which she spoke of being a victim of domestic abuse without ever explicitly naming Depp. The minutiae being combed through at the trial has come to feel less like a lawsuit and more like a torturous exorcism of the past, a thorough and painful raking over the coals of their 4-year entanglement. Actually, that is a lawsuit. Lawsuits are not pretty. Lawsuits are not fun. They are not enjoyable. They are a no-holds-barred, knockdown, drag-out fight. There's a saying that when it comes to lawsuits, even if you win, you feel like a loser, and that's absolutely true. The legal process drains the living hell out of everybody involved. So no, this is not unusual. This is not strange. If you are taking someone to court or you are being taken to court, it is incumbent upon you to present absolutely everything you can relevant to the case. If you don't, you are wasting your time and you are wasting the court's time. It goes on, the details of both Depp and Heard's testimonies are harrowing all by themselves, gruesome, violent, and containing deeply intimate anecdotes about their relationship. Broadly speaking, witness testimonies can be persuasive, and with two actors in the dock, we can never be sure of the absolute truth. I did a video about this recently. This is a comment that keeps coming up, that because Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are professional liars, or actors or professional liars, what have you, they must not be totally trustworthy in their statements. Actors are not con artists. Actors do not have a vested interest in convincing you that they literally are the person that they are portraying. When you go to see an actor perform, be it in live theater or on the screen, you do so with the understanding that this is a character that they are portraying, that what you are seeing is not actual reality. That's very different from, say, the fly-by-night snake oil salesman who wants to convince you that he actually is a qualified nutritionist or something like that. Going on. Still, despite the fact that London's High Court previously found allegations that Depp was a wife-beater to be substantially true, the internet appears to have overwhelmingly picked Depp's side. Last week, hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp was trending on Twitter. Yesterday, it was hashtag Amber Turd. Okay, so the UK trial was not a trial to determine whether or not Johnny Depp had beat Amber Heard. The trial was not against Amber Heard, it was against a newspaper, and the purpose of the trial was to determine whether or not the newspaper had committed an act of libel when they referred to Johnny Depp as a wife-beater. Now, the newspaper could have avoided all of this problem if they had just used the word allegedly. Nevertheless, what had to be demonstrated in court was whether or not the newspaper had acted in good faith, calling Johnny Depp a wife-beater. So, in this case, they were working off of the statements made by Amber Heard and the public fallout thereof. So it was reasonable. It was reasonable to determine that they were that they were acting in good faith and calling him a wife beater. Now, the thing is, they can be acting in good faith and operating off of incorrect information. There is, I hate to feed into the rumor mill, but there is a rumor going around that the UK courts are currently re-examining their verdict in light of everything that's come forward in this trial. That's certainly something to consider if that comes forward. But anyway, we are not required to accept the ruling of any court. We can disagree with a ruling. A great number of people, for example, think that O.J. Simpson got away with murder. That's the reality of the situation. Courts can be wrong. And there are certain times when it's important to acknowledge that courts can be wrong. For example, in the case of Amanda Knox, when Amanda Knox was accused of murdering Meredith Kirshner and subsequently tried and found guilty. She was found guilty in a court of law. She appealed and appealed and appealed, was eventually exonerated, was tried in absentia by the highest court in Italy, and eventually fully and completely exonerated at that level. In all of those cases, there were plenty of people who believed that the courts were wrong, and indeed the courts were wrong. So it is ridiculous to think that just because a court comes to a particular ruling, we are somehow bound to agree with it or uphold it or never question it or anything like that. It's ultimately an argument from authority fallacy, and keep that in mind because he will actually close with the same argument from authority fallacy. Going on. Go on social media, and the anti-Heard sentiment is palpable. The memes have been ferocious, sometimes consisting of a spot-the-difference comparison with domestic abuse victims. At other times, televised courtroom footage has been appropriated to openly mock her appearance. It is plain misogyny. The company behind the makeup compact Heard used to hide her bruises even made a TikTok disputing her claims. Heard is being systematically jeered at like a medieval criminal in the stocks as she catalogs historic abuse as she alleges rape. Have we completely lost track of the severity of these allegations? Okay, where to begin with this comment? All right. First of all, the saying it is plain misogyny is based on nothing. Literally nothing. This is not the criticisms of Amber Heard are not being levied at all women in general. They are being levied specifically and exclusively at her. Nothing that I have not seen anything in Twitter, on YouTube, in the news, in the media, anything that is trying to allege that the statements made against Amber Heard are somehow indicative of behavior common to women in general. If that were the angle that people were taking, then yes, that would be misogynistic. But at the end of the day, this boils down to accusations being levied at a single person who happens to be female. This is, again, more sensationalism, more gaslighting, more pushing the misogyny button to get out of making an actual argument. And journalists like this have a plethora of such buttons they can push. They can push the misogyny button, they can push the race button, they can push the homophobia button, they can push the transphobia button, and a whole bunch of other buttons. Just name a specific word pertinent to a demographic that the person being accused falls into, and we're all expected to drop all criticism immediately. But then it says the company behind the makeup compact Heard used to hide her bruises even made a TikTok. That is an incorrect statement. That is an absolutely incorrect statement, in line with the kind of poor journalism that was challenged in the UK trial. She did not. It has not been proven that she used that compact to cover up her bruises. That is an allegation. It is alleged. It has not been proven. In fact, within a day, I believe the same day that this article ran, during Heard's cross-examination, she was forced to admit that it was not the exact that the compact in question was not the exact compact that was used to cover up her bruises. And she claimed, she said, well, of course, or I'm not going to quote her directly, but she tried to claim that it was not that exact compact after her lawyer held up that exact compact in court and said, this is the compact that Amber Heard used. Now, the thing is, disputing her claims, they're not disputing her claims, they're pointing out that they did not make that compact when she was with Johnny Depp. She could not have used it. And that's what's interesting. It's a very, very backwards, very insidious thing that's done here, where he tries to use even-handedness as a means to cover up anything that could be potentially damning to Amber Heard. And then it goes on. The thing about as she catalogs historic abuse as she alleges rape, have we completely lost track of the severity of these allegations? No, absolutely not. Now, to be clear, I can only speak for myself and only truly know what is in my heart specifically. But the reason that people, I would have to speculate based on my own feelings, that the reason people are angry at Amber Heard and the reason that they are upset with her is because they are aware of the severity of these allegations, because they don't like somebody crying wolf like this, because they know that it's extraordinarily inappropriate, that it is a mockery of actual victims. So no, I don't think anyone has forgotten the severity of these claims. I am yet to see anyone make fun of Amber Heard for being a victim of domestic abuse or for being a victim of rape. I've seen a lot of people expressing their contempt and their aggravation at her for lying about these things. And that's what's amazing about the way this article is written. It's written with a suggestion that everything that Amber Heard has said is true, has been proven to be true, and that absolutely no new evidence has come to light, or no new public awareness of the issue has come to light that makes Amber Heard's Amber Heard's claims worthy of being called into question. It presumes that Amber Heard is automatically right, that everybody knows that she's automatically right, and that anybody who disagrees with her is acting in contempt of something, is acting contemptuously towards something that they know to be true. And then it goes on. We all understand that Depp fans will side with Depp, but even the less aggressively Depp-pilled of us want to believe that the Caribbean pirate is blameless, if not squeaky clean, then at least under the duress of drug addiction or acting out of character, that his violence can somewhat be explained away by a lapse of judgment or circumstance, or both. We certainly don't want to believe that this entire court case is a precise and conniving operation in discrediting Heard, regardless of what she has to say, regardless of her truth. So, again, it's amazing. Like, there is, I say this somewhat mockingly, but also somewhat appreciatively. There's actually an extraordinary amount of skill that someone has to have to intertwine this level of misinformation and gaslighting and just outright bullshit. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, this is like when it comes to a hack job, a yellow journalism hack job, this is arguably one of the best. So so let's see. First of all, we want to believe that the Caribbean pirate is that his violence can somewhat be explained away by a lapse of judgment or circumstance, or both. That is not what is being argued. Again, you are completely misrepresenting the argument that is at hand. The argument at hand is not that Johnny's behavior can be explained away. It's that Johnny's behavior, what Amber accused Johnny of doing, did not occur. Then, and that is what's being increasingly demonstrated in the courts. Now, you are never, in any of these circumstances, you're never going to find anything where everybody behaves perfectly all the time. But the overwhelming evidence shows, I would argue, and I think I would argue, and I think anyone supporting Johnny Depp would argue, that the overwhelming evidence speaks in his favor. That time and again, it's showing that Amber Heard lied. Just recently, as I'm sitting to make this video, she was recently forced to admit under cross-examination that she never actually donated the money that she was supposed to donate to charity, that she pledged and agreed to donate to charity. She never actually donated it. She never donated it, and has been previously put under oath saying that she made that donation. She lied under oath. So that is what is being demonstrated. That is what continues to come out, is that she is lying. And, just in that example, people keep trying to prevaricate away the reality of the situation, that she lied about that. She made the argument herself that she couldn't donate the money because Johnny Depp sued her. Well, first of all, there was a considerable window of time between her being sued and her receiving the money and her being sued. She had no reason at the time to think she needed to hold on to the money for that. And two, tough shit. Even if you have to put together money for a legal team, you still don't get to hold on to money that you had pledged to donate to a charity. So we get to add charity fraud on top of all of the other horrible things that Amber Heard is being revealed to have done. And if I may editorialize for a minute, I think defrauding major charities to the tune of millions of dollars is a far more damning and egregious thing than taking a crap in somebody's bed. I really feel like we could move on from that at this point. Anyway, then it goes on to, we certainly don't want to believe the entire court case is a precise and conniving operation in discrediting Heard, regardless of what she has to say, regardless of her truth. Well, first of all, yes, it is an operation in discrediting Amber Heard. That's the point. They're trying to establish Johnny Depp's guilt and evidence of her wrongdoing. And it's weird how he just continually decides what we all think about everything, makes that decision for us, and proceeds as if he has the God-given right to make a decision about what everybody is supposed to think about the objective nature of reality. He's the sole arbiter of what's actually going on, and just decides for us. He even speaks using the collective we in describing this. He's literally telling us what we all think. And then it says, but this last thing, regardless of her truth. This is an expression, her truth, his truth, their truth. All of these things need to go. This is an expression we need to stop saying. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of expressions that have entered the politically correct sphere of discussion that I think we need to stop using. For example, we need to stop using the phrase black and brown bodies. It's objectifying because those are actually people. We need to stop using the expression Latinx or Latinx because, first of all, most Latino people don't want to use it, and second of all, it's a smack in the face to their culture, which does use gendered language, whether you like it or not. So I should say it's white people, white academics making a smack in their face to their language and their culture. So there are a lot of expressions like that we need to stop using. And her truth, his truth, their truth, that's an expression that needs to stop being used. Because there is not her truth. There is not his truth. There is the truth. Period. The truth. And the truth refers to the objective nature of reality. And the person who is said to be telling the truth is the person whose version of events most closely and accurately aligns with the objective nature of reality. The implications of this, I don't think I'm being overly hyperbolic when I say the implications of this are astounding. We do not go to court so that we can decide whose truth we like more. We go to court so we can decide who is telling the truth, who is on the side of right and who is lying. In a world where everybody has his truth or her truth, there's no such thing as justice. Everybody believes what they want to believe. And again, I'm going to be bringing this point up a lot, but Mr. Smith, if you were accused of a crime, I don't think that you would simply agree to plead guilty because out of respect for the other person telling her truth or his truth. No, I think you would rally together all of the evidence you could get to prove that they are inaccurate or incorrect. Moving on. I don't want to think about what this is saying to victims of abuse who are considering coming forward. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. This is not saying anything to victims of abuse that are thinking about coming forward. Coming forward consists of going to the police or law enforcement or filing civil action against somebody to solve a problem in the court of law. We have somehow decided, and I've talked about this previously, we've somehow decided that it's morally virtuous to go on Twitter and blow up the social media sphere of discussion with outrageous claims and destroy somebody's life that way. That has got to stop. Everybody, victim or not, has got to know that that has got to stop. This is madcap insanity. And you're about to use the expression witch trial. That is a witch trial, sir. This is what Amber Heard is going through is just a normal trial. That is a witch trial. A witch trial is when people get to just say, I saw Goody Proctor with the devil, and that person gets dragged off and burned at the stake. When accusations are treated as the evidence simply because they were made in the public square. That is a witch trial. Anyway, and regardless of what Heard did or didn't suffer at the hands of Depp, isn't the relentless memeing of her a form of violence in itself? No, it isn't, sir. This is another politically correct expression that needs to go by the wayside. Violence is violence. I've suffered real violence. I've been beaten unconscious. I have been to the emergency room. I have experienced extraordinarily traumatic physical injuries in my life, things that I am still recovering from. To tell me, sir, that the public discussion on Twitter is a form of violence is disrespectful to me and every other person who has ever suffered actual physical violence. It's tantamount to saying that graffiti is a form of arson. You're just trying to inflate a lesser crime, or I should say a lesser evil, by attaching it to something more severe. That is absolutely ridiculous. No, words are not violent. Now, don't misunderstand me. I understand and know firsthand the effects of being dogpiled on social media. It is an extraordinarily psychologically excruciating experience. It can indeed be traumatic in its own right, but it is not violence. Stop using hyperbole to inflate the nature of the situation. Then it goes on. Is the pummeling by social media not a type of psychological assault? Are we not witnessing a modern-day witch trial? No, we're not, for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. This is not a witch trial. This is a legitimate... The actual trial that's going on is a legitimate trial. It's a legitimate discussion. If I put it this way, I mean, it's a legitimate discussion towards determining right and wrong, culpability in a given area, all of that. It's a legitimate trial. If you're talking specifically about the social media reality of this trial, then I would argue that every single time one of these things happens in the sphere of social media, it could also be considered a witch trial. It needs to stop in general. Now, let me back up there. Cancel culture needs to stop in general. Canceling people in the court of public opinion, that needs to stop. Unfortunately, it's the current reality of the situation that everybody is going to voice their opinion about this. If I could control everybody, I would tell them to remain calm and respectful and afford Amber Heard the dignity and respect that she as a human being is entitled to by virtue of simply being a human being. However, I can't do that. I can't control what millions and millions and millions of people are going to say when they weigh in on this issue. So, no, I think it's totally understandable that people are going to be vexed by by what they have seen, by what they view as a very real and very legitimate injustice, and they're going to be angry and upset about it. That's understandable. Moving forward. Some weeks, the internet is buoyant, keeping all of us afloat by daft dresses and Kardashian weddings and Marvel actors saying they've never been in the same room. Other weeks, it just feels too heavy. We're watching people actively seek out humor in domestic abuse as Roe v. Wade is terrorized by pro-lifers, and we see yet more episodes of racially aggravated violence. We'll rally, we always rally, but right here, right now, it feels shit. No, sir, those events are totally unrelated. This current trial, which is being carried out between private citizens, is not a policy matter. It has no bearing on policy matters whatsoever. Whatever the Supreme Court does or does not do with regards to Roe v. Wade will not be impacted by the outcome of this trial. You're trying to set up Amber Heard as some sort of noble victim, some sort of martyr for women's issues or for progressive causes in general, and she simply is not. You are hurting those causes by attaching them to Amber Heard. Amber Heard has increasingly in a court of law showed herself to be a liar, a con artist, a grifter, a grifter, a fraudster, an abuser, and a verbally and psychologically hostile human being over and over again. These are facts. This is reality. And I don't like to guess at people's motives, but as I said in my previous video, I truly think that people who are saying things like, well, they're both actors, we can't really know. I truly think that people who are saying things like that just don't want to pick a side. They don't want to. If they were to say this issue is too much for me, I just can't deal with it on a psychological level, I'm not going to be a part of it, I could honestly respect that. Anyway, moving forward. The guy says, I spend a lot of time wondering if everyone's lost the plot, if the erosion of empathy we see online has rendered us so inherently unkind as a species that there's no return. No, it hasn't. You need to pay attention to the extraordinary outpouring of public sympathy for Johnny Depp, who is the actual victim in this situation. Just because people have decided that the victim is not the person you want to identify as the victim does not mean that empathy has been eroded. He goes on and says, I don't want to despair for humanity. I want to believe that some of us are offline and mildly compassionate, or compassionate in a way that doesn't get tweeted about, that you're all out there being nice to each other, and I'm reporting on a tiny cluster of internet users with pitchforks. This is just psychological bullying. This is gaslighting in the extreme. Again, this writer is playing pretend at this point. But I'm not going to keep harping on that. I want to focus on the final and most disturbing paragraph of all. He goes on and says, though I felt myself veering toward it, I can no longer both sides this. It's time to draw a line. It's time to believe women, all women. It's time to believe Heard. The British courts believe Depp beat his ex-wife. What's stopping the rest of us? Well, once again, sir, that is an argument from authority fallacy. We're not required to agree with the courts just because that was the ruling they came to. Now, and again, you know, I'm sure. Well, I'm not going to harp on that anymore. As Christopher Hitchens said, that which can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. What you have said here is a logical fallacy. Again, it's argument from authority fallacy. We're not required to believe what the courts say. But I want to close on that final statement, that one statement that you said, I can no longer both sides this. It's time to draw a line. It's time to believe women, all women. Because now the sermon veers into fire and brimstone territory. Naysayers will hear what I'm about to say and say, oh, I think what he means is, or, oh, well, I think what he really means here is, no, we're not doing that. We are working off of what he actually said there, which was, it's time to believe women, all women. His statement said that all women have to be believed when they make claims. That is what all women precludes the possibility of ever considering any other possibility other than absolute agreement with the person in question, provided they are a woman. That statement, believe all women, the hashtag that started it, has been circulating for about a decade now. stop and ask yourself what you would say if the hashtag was not believe all women. What if it was believe all accusers? If it was believe all accusers, if we remove the hot button divisive issue that is gender relations from the discussion and we just made the hashtag believe all accusers, we would, I think most people, most sane thinking adults would be able to tell that that is absolutely ridiculous. That we know that human beings act in bad faith. We know that it is completely unrealistic and completely untenable to think that we could mount a movement saying believe all accusers, because you know what would happen then. Then we would really and truly have your witch hunt that you are talking about, sir. When people can just point their fingers and an accusation has to be believed with no amount of due process whatsoever. We all know how utterly ridiculous that is. We all know that whatever you think of the United States and its justice system, which is far from perfect, anyone who has completed a civics course should understand that our justice system is based on the premise that you are innocent until proven guilty. And if you have a problem with understanding why innocent until proven guilty is important, then you need to stop and strongly imagine what it would be like if you were on trial in a situation where no innocence exists, in a situation where all accusers must be believed in point of fact. Would you want to stand before 12 people on a jury who believed that all accusers must be believed? No, of course not. What would even be the point of the trial at that point? So when we take away the hot button issue of women and we just apply it to accusers in general, we know how utterly ridiculous that statement is. And it does not become less ridiculous when you narrow the demographic to one gender. For 10 years now, those of us who said that the hashtag believe all women was ridiculous, was draconian, was a dereliction of justice and due process, those of us who believed that were mocked and ridiculed as being misogynists, and the claim was that anyone who would have a problem with hashtag believe all women must somehow be a tacit supporter of abuse, domestic abuse, rape, and every other horrible crime that predominantly affects women in their own right. And it's high time for those of us who have been victims of that accusation for 10 years now to stand up and say that we are not the crazy ones. The Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial is a referendum on a lot of things socially. Finally, people are realizing that it's okay to come forward and say that men can be victims of abuse. It's okay to come forward and say that women can be perpetrators of abuse against men. The long-standing response to the idea that women could be abusers is that women on average have less upper body strength than men, and therefore being at an immediate physical disadvantage could never possibly perpetrate abuse, at least not on par with that which is perpetrated by men against women. Now, to be very clear, and I'm amazed that I have to be very clear about this, abuse against women does occur. I know women who have been raped. I know women who have been victims of domestic battery. I have seen it happen with firsthand with my own two eyes, and it's a deeply disturbing and deeply traumatizing thing. I won't go into it now, but I did a video called Manson v. Wood, Evan Remembers, where I talked a little bit in the exposition about my own experiences seeing male on female domestic abuse. It's something, or it wasn't domestic, but it was male on female abuse. Those experiences were things that haunt me to this day, things that I still have nightmares about, things that in almost 20 years since seeing them I still have not been able to move on from because I can't let go of the fundamental injustice of it all. So please kindly find somebody else to psychologically manipulate with your ridiculous buzzword nonsense. But I want to say something more penetrating, Mr. Smith. I want to ask a question, and I know you will never respond to it, or if you do, it will likely be a flippant, a throwaway response on Twitter. But I want to ask something in all sincerity. Even if it only ever amounts to a rhetorical device, this question needs to be posed to you, Mr. Smith. If you were a victim, if you were accused of domestic abuse, domestic battery, rape, stalking, any of these other crimes, if you were accused of these things and you were innocent, would you, sir, admit guilt to a crime you did not commit, suffer the punishment for that crime, and have the record of that punishment, crime and punishment, follow you for all the remaining days of your life, simply out of your solidarity for the fact that you are, simply out of your solidarity with the belief that you ought to believe all women? Would you do that, sir? Would you be willing to lay that down? Would you be willing to accept that accusation? Would you be willing to accept guilt and responsibility for an accusation you know is not true, simply out of solidarity for this? Or would you rally all of the evidence and all that you had at your hand and all of the legal representation you could possibly afford and protest your innocence? The latter is what I believe you would do, and the latter is what you should do. And every person who watches that trial unfold, assuming it happens to any degree in the public eye, has a right to come to their conclusions about it, one way or the other. I have thought back and forth about whether or not I wanted to include this. You might, if those who are more ardent viewers of my channel might remember that last night a version of this video went up for about an hour and was taken down because I decided that I could do it better. But I want to tell you a story that happened to me, a simple story to show you how easy it is to be wrongly accused of something by a malicious actor that is trying to bend circumstances to their advantage. I used to be an Uber driver. I was an Uber driver I was an Uber and Lyft driver, but it's shorthanded as Uber driver. I did ride sharing for 4 years. It's an absolutely horrible job. I don't recommend it to anybody. But the pay is good, or can be very good at times, and that's why I did it for as long as I did. Otherwise, I would have been out of there very quickly. But I had a number of wild, crazy interactions with people. And I'm going to give you an example of one. In fact, it was one that happened the week before I stopped Uber driving altogether because I was in a horrible car accident. After the COVID lockdown restrictions were somewhat lifted, Uber drivers were able to start working again with the caveat that we were wearing masks when we worked and that the people we drove were wearing masks when they were in the car. And they were explicit that it had to be a mask. Doing this was not acceptable. It had to be a mask. It had to be a proper mask. And when you signed onto the app, you had to every time sign off on an agreement that you were going to use a mask. I assumed that it was the same for the passengers. Anyway, one day I picked up a woman, did not bother to look at her when she got in the car. I had my mask on, but I picked up this woman one afternoon. She got in the car, and as we were driving along, we got on the interstate. And so we're driving on the interstate, and she started coughing. She started coughing very heavily, and she was on the phone with somebody, and she mentioned on the phone that she was sick. And she complained about how sick she was. She also did something that was extraordinarily disrespectful, which was she started talking about me like I was not in the car. She started complaining about the quality of my car and things like that to the person she was talking to, as if I was not sitting right there. As we were driving along, I had to jam on the brakes very quickly because a car merged in front of me. So because of that, I pulled off. Because of that, I told her, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. When the lurch happened in the car, when I jammed on the brakes, I looked in the rearview mirror and noticed that she was not wearing a mask. I asked if she had a mask. She did not. I said, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the car. You are not wearing a mask. You've said that you're sick, and you're being disrespectful to me. So I pulled over to the side of the road, and as I was pulling over, she asked if she could do this thing. I said, no, that's not acceptable. You're going to have to leave. So at this point, I had pulled off the interstate onto a side street in Atlanta. And when I told her she was going to have to get out of the car, then she said that she said, all right, let me call the police and tell them that you broke both my legs, that you assaulted me. At that point, she did not call the police. She called her friends and told them where we were so that they could come find me and beat me up. I took out my phone and called the police at that point. When I called the police, she started screaming. When the dispatch officer came on the line, she started screaming over my shoulder into the phone that she was in excruciating pain, that both of her legs had been broken, that she could not get out of the car. I kept telling her to get out of the car. She would not get out of the car. She kept screaming at the top of her lungs that her legs were broken. I had to shout into the phone that I needed somebody out there. They came out, and as soon as it was apparent that there was actually police on the way, she did get out of the car. Suddenly, the broken legs magically vanished. She got out of the car, and when the officer arrived, I got out of my car, and I came over and spoke to the officer, and was explaining what happened. And she walked up and said, excuse me, I'm going to let you finish, but officer, I need to press charges for assault against him. He broke both my legs. And she proceeded to tell the officer that when I had been driving on the interstate and I suddenly had to brake very hard, that had broken both of her legs, and she needed to press charges for assault. That is absolutely absurd. That is absolutely ridiculous to think that she was assaulted that way. First, she would have to prove malice aforethought. She would have to prove that there was intent to cause her bodily harm when I did that. When in reality, it's very simple to prove that my action was obviously motivated by braking because a person merged in front of me very suddenly. Two, she would have to prove that her legs were actually broken, and the fact that she was able to get up and stand there. When the cop showed up, she did not moan or exhibit any pain whatsoever. She was standing there on two legs that were very clearly not broken. The police had body cam footage then of her standing there on two legs that were very clearly not broken. But she interrupted, and the cop tried to say, I'm going to talk to you in a minute. I need to talk to him right now. And she would not cooperate. And she said, no, I can't wait. I have to go meet my girlfriend at the hospital. And he said, well, if you leave now, you can't press charges. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he told her. Anyway, she said, no, I can press charges anytime. And she turned to me and said, what's your name? And I said, I'm not giving you my name. And she went, wow, and turned around and walked away. The woman claiming to have two broken legs, claiming that she couldn't get out of my car because she'd never been in such pain in all of her life. The woman who claimed that braking hard in a car on the highway was somehow an act of assault that had somehow broken both of her legs, but not my legs, walked off from the scene, never to be seen again. And I turned to the officer and I said, are we done here? And he said, I think we are. And we went on. Now, the epilogue to that was that I reported her to Uber, as one ought to. Then I received a call from Uber claiming that she had left her purse in my car. And could I meet up with her to return it? I checked through my car, found absolutely no evidence of a purse, wrote to Uber and said she didn't have a purse. If I find one, I'll hand it into Lost and Found. I am never going to be in this woman's presence ever again. And that was that. But I ask you, Mr. Smith, out of a solidarity with believing women, all women, should I have admitted to that? Should I have just admitted guilt to this cockamamie bullshit scheme that she had cooked up? Should I have just admitted guilt to that and suffered the consequences? Should I have wasted the court's time with the utterly outlandish and ridiculous claim that it was somehow possible to break both of her legs by braking hard in my car, something that people do all the time without breaking anybody's legs? Was that what I was supposed to do? Just admit guilt for something that was obviously absolute horse shit? So as not to be a misogynist, so that in so doing I would be doing my part to make sure that Roe v. Wade was not overturned and that racial violence at the hands of police somehow ceased to occur? Of course not. This idea is absolutely ridiculous. And if you think that people will not try to fuck you over, will not try to make false allegations to get their way, will not try to spin things in their favor, will not come up with every ridiculous bullshit idea they can to put one over on you and the legal system, then, sir, I invite you to spend 4 years as an Uber driver. It might be a real wake-up call for you, and you might suddenly find yourself thinking very differently about writing ridiculous articles where we just try to browbeat people into changing their opinion on principle in defiance of all of the objective evidence that is there in support of not her truth, not his truth, but the truth. Thank you and good luck.